And welcome to this Monday edition of America Talks Live. I'm your host, Miranda Kahn. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. We've got a lot to talk about today, including new revelations about the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. last year. We'll talk about who she may have been working for. But first, let's take a look at some of today's biggest headlines. Counselor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway, says James Comey broke the law if his leaked memos contain classified information.
The Boy Scout choir boy defense doesn't hold up here because if it contains classified information, he is apparently violating, at the very least, what all members of the FBI sign.
Over the weekend, The Hill reported that more than half of the former FBI director's memos had classified or secret information in them. Now, he testified last month, as you may recall, that he gave his friend at least one memo and hopes that he would share its contents with the media, which happened. All right, though North Korea now is accusing the U.S. of pushing the Korean Peninsula to the tipping point of a nuclear war. U.S. and South Korean military officials conducted a live drill last week after the communist country successfully tested an ICBM. And two gunmen reportedly opened fire at a gender reveal party in Ohio. The pregnant mother says her baby died and was also wounded. She was. Officials say one person was killed and at least 8 others were injured. The alleged suspects haven't been arrested or identified yet. All right, Vermont's Governor Phil Scott becomes the all-time winningest driver in the top stock car division. Now, he won his 30th race over the weekend and is the first sitting governor to win a race at all. Congrats to him. All right, now that you're all up to date, let's bring in our first guest. Joining me now via Skype from New York, we have Noah Rothman, the assistant online editor at Commentary Magazine. We're also pleased to have with us Larry Klayman. He is the founder of Freedom Watch. He's also a former federal prosecutor. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. Good to have you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so here's a look at our agenda today. In addition to the Trump Jr. and Russian lawyer story, we're also going to talk about James Comey's memos and a new report that claims that they contained classified information, at least half of them, and what that could mean for the former FBI director moving forward. Plus, we'll talk about the GOP backlash over President Trump's idea of creating this kind of cybersecurity partnership with Russia, why the president seems to be kind of backing down now from that idea. And the latest on the vitals of a health care bill that appears to be on life support in the Senate, why one Republican lawmaker says it's dead. All right, our big story today. New details emerge on that story involving Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting, the one that happened with the Russian lawyer. Well, Trump's legal team claims that the attorney had connections with the U.S. political firm, which was behind that discredited dossier about Trump. Remember that? Well, this comes out of the New York Times reported Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his eldest son, Trump Jr., met with the lawyer in hopes of obtaining damaging information about then-rival Hillary Clinton. Now, Trump Jr. released a statement about that meeting. He says the woman claimed that she had information that people connected to Russia were funding the DNC and backing Clinton, and said that their statements were vague and didn't make any sense. Now, Trump Jr. says she then changed subjects and began discussing the adoption of Russian children, and became clear that that was her true objective. He says he told the lawyer Trump was a private citizen and that her concerns were better addressed if and when he held public office. Meanwhile, the White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, says this is a nothing story.
The individual that set up the meeting may have been affiliated with Fusion GPS, which is an opposition research firm that is being subpoenaed and talked to by the Senate Judiciary Committee about their role in putting together that phony dossier that people know about in regard to the president. So this is a developing story. I don't know much about it other than it seems to be on the end of the Trump individual. It's a big nothing burger, but may spin out of control for the DNC and the Democrats.
Larry, was the meeting an act of treason, as some critics have argued, or is this just a big nothing burger, as Priebus suggests?
Well, I think what he's saying is it's not a nothing burger as opposed to what's going to happen potentially with the DNC and the people that put this Russian lawyer up to it. It appears to have been kind of a sting operation to try to enmesh Donald Jr. into some kind of collusive activity, at least in terms of appearance. So I don't think it's going to amount to much with regard to Trump, but it may amount to a lot with regard to the Democratic National Committee and their surrogates. And there's one other thing, Miranda, which I think is really important. Isn't it a sad commentary in our legal system that information had to come out about the crimes of Hillary Clinton through WikiLeaks and alleged Russian hacking when we had various Freedom of Information Act requests and lawsuits pending to get documentation during that period, and very leftist pro-Clinton and Obama judges slow-rolled all of that. In fact, not just with regard to Freedom Watch, but with regard to my former group, Judicial Watch, and others. It's really a sad commentary, just to reiterate, that information had to come out through alleged Russian hacking or anything like that. And in fact, Comey himself suppressed this information with the FBI and others. So this is a commentary on the U.S. justice system as well.
Now, what about Trump's legal team claiming that this attorney had connections with a U.S. political firm, Fusion GPS, that was retained by Democratic operatives? Does this look like a setup to you, and could this prove to be very troublesome for the Democrats, as Larry Klayman and Reince Priebus are suggesting?
Well, I suppose it would have to only be a setup insofar as your willingness to entertain quite clearly a foreign agent aligned with a foreign government which has hostile intentions towards the United States, and your interest insofar as being able to suspend your disbelief that this is a willing partner with no alternative motives, and only in order to advance a domestic political campaign and your father's political prospects. If you are that gullible, then you're entrappable. I don't think that this was something that was set up by Democrats necessarily. I think this was another effort, one of many documented efforts by the Russian government to feel out whether or not the Trump campaign was interested in providing them assurances that sanctions relief would be in the offing in the event that they won the presidency. And that's what this woman was interested in doing. She was presenting the adoptions issue, which was a direct response to the passage of the Magnitsky Act, an act by Congress to punish Russia for engaging in the torture and murder of a human rights attorney. And that was her motive, and she did so by saying, look, I have information on Hillary Clinton. This dovetails with another Republican operative who is alleged by the Wall Street Journal last week to be, quote, according to him, working with Mike Flynn in some capacity and soliciting from Russian linked hackers through third parties the information that might have been gleaned off Hillary Clinton's server by illegal acts. That information was stolen. It's stolen goods, and your request to launder it is complicity in a crime. Whether or not the political objective merits it, e.g. defeating Hillary Clinton, it's still an act of gross negligence.
Let me ask.
Miranda,
go ahead, Larry.
Ironic. Yeah, yesterday I was watching the movie All the President's Men. That was about Watergate and
right.
Bob Woodward, Bernstein. I know Watergate. I met with him years ago over the Chinagate scandal involving Hillary Clinton. And what struck me was that Ben Bradley, the editor of the Washington Post, even according to leftist Hollywood in this movie, made it clear that he wanted sources. He wanted to have it confirmed that things were actually true before he published things in Watergate. That's no longer the case. And what we just heard here, no disrespect to my co-commentator here, was a lot of supposition without sourcing. It's just a smear job, and that's what's been going on. And there's nothing wrong in even having contact with the Russian government before you become president. If you're President Trump, he was already elected to be president. We even have another leftist Hollywood show, it's called Homeland, where they have a female Washington president just elected. Presumably they were hoping it was Hillary Clinton, collaborating with Iranian interests before she's actually sworn in as president. So the fact that the left is going crazy over this and then has Hollywood movies which contradict what it does tells you the state of the nation. This is a smear job by the left to destroy the Trump presidency. Anything they do becomes a crime. But then, ironically, as we now know, as you said in your lead-in, as you showed, it's Comey who committed crimes by releasing classified information and then going to try to get an independent counsel or a special counsel, whatever you call it, Robert Mueller, who is now packing his investigation with 15 lawyers before he knows that he's even going to indict anybody.
Well, we're going to talk about Comey a little bit later in the show, but a former CIA agent claims that it's, quote, very suspicious that Trump Jr. didn't reveal the name of the person who introduced him to the Russian lawyer. Here's Bob Baer on CNN.
My sense here is we're approaching the smoking gun. This meeting very well may have been to talk about hacked emails. And the fact that Donald Trump Jr. did not come forward to the FBI immediately in the middle of this scandal and say, here's what happened at this meeting. We think that possibly they were proposing a crime. Here's everything I know. They're withholding, and that's what disturbs me as a former CIA officer.
Baer also says that the White House's credibility is so bad that he'd take what the Russians say over the White House. Noah, does this meeting, even just the pure optics of it, whether there was anything illegal happening here, undermine the credibility of the Trump administration, even if Trump Jr. says the president himself wasn't even aware of it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you don't have to take my word for it. Take Kellyanne Conway's word for it. Take Vice President Mike Pence, all of whom on the record said that there was absolutely no contact between campaign operatives and members of the Russian government or intermediaries linked to the Russian government. We know that's not true, not once, but twice, but three, but 4 times, even I think 5 times. You have Paul Manafort, Jeff Sessions, Carter Page, Donald Trump Jr., and Mike Flynn, all of whom had contact in some form with members of the Russian government, and Jared Kushner as well, and all of whom failed to disclose this when it was in their best interest to do so, and when it was they were legally obliged to do so. It's not our fault that the administration fails and is utterly incapable of dispelling the appearance of having untoward relationships with members of the Russian government. It is entirely and completely on the shoulders of this president and his lack of foresight to surround himself with individuals who leave us with that suspicion. Nobody is alleging a crime, at least I'm not, but it's only human to reach the worst possible explanation when you're surrounded by people who are lying.
Larry Klayman, thanks so much for joining us today. Noah Rothman, we're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen, but please stick around because we have a lot more to talk about after the break. You heard what our guests think. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with a Russian lawyer? Is it important? Does the public need to know more about it? Is it timing unusual for you? Or is it, as Reince Priebus suggested, just a big nothing burger? Vote now at newsmax.com/polls. You can also email us at newsmaxnow@newsmaxtv.com.